Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave.
On behalf of every father and every mother.
Wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors.
And paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have an excellent, if possibly brief, broadcast for you this week. As you guys might know, some other events in the news have overshadowed the traditional coverage that's received in the media about what's going on in Ukraine. Of course, things are still going on in Ukraine, so we've done our best to round all that information up for you. But it's a bit of a light week, so we'll go over all that. So if you could, though, before we begin, please do hit the like and subscribe button, hit that little bell. It really helps us out, helps us let you know when we're doing all of our weekly broadcasts, but also any kind of special stuff we're doing in between. And also it really helps us spread the word about Tochnyi. And we appreciate you guys for doing pretty much all the marketing for us. YouTube doesn't promote us very much. So thanks so much for spreading the word about us and for engaging with our channel so that people see it. Also, we have a website. It's called Tochnyi.info. It stores all of our great research by a lot of different researchers, not just people that appear on the stream. So if you want more information about what we discuss here, if you want some detailed maps, some other documentation that gets into a little bit more granular detail, it's a great place to visit, Tochnyi.info. We also have social media. We've got Blue Sky. We've got Twitter. Those are the main two outlets where we publish stuff on social media. So if you want to check that out, follow that. You can get some updates there about our plans and our goings on. So that's about it for my introduction. We will have a Q&A at the end. So if you guys want to ask any questions in the chat about any of the stuff we're discussing, feel free. We'll do our best to address it at some point. So without any further delay, I will now present the news for this week. These are the main headlines as of June 15th, 2025. First up, we have operations. Ukrainian military units launched coordinated attacks on multiple strategic military locations inside Russia during the night of June 10th. According to a statement from Ukraine's general staff, the operation aimed to weaken Russia's ability to manufacture explosive materials and distribute munitions. Among the targeted sites was the Tambov gunpowder plant, a significant component of Russia's defense manufacturing infrastructure. The facility is integral to supplying materials for various firearms, artillery systems, and rocket weaponry, and was reportedly impacted by the strike, resulting in a fire at the location. The plant also produces chemical compounds essential to formulating explosives. Other reported incidents included detonations in the vicinity of an ammunition storage facility tied to Russia's 106th Airborne Division located in Kursk. Another site affected was a logistics warehouse situated at the Bortulinovka Air Base in Voronezh Oblast. Independent analysts are still assessing the effectiveness of the recent strikes. During the night of June 13th, Ukrainian unmanned aerial units again carried out strikes against infrastructure tied to Russia's defense production network. One of the primary targets was the independent oil and gas company JSC located in Samara Oblast. This facility is recognized as a significant contributor to the manufacture of key materials used in explosives and plays a role within Russia's defense manufacturing sector. The strike reportedly led to multiple explosions and subsequent fires within the industrial zone. Another site was the Nevinomysk chemical facility in Stavropol Krai. This plant is a major source of key components used in ammunition, explosives, and missiles. Like the attack on the 11th, the full scope of the damage is still being assessed. A Russian strike on the city of Zaporizhzhia resulted in the complete destruction of a warehouse that was storing over 100 tons of humanitarian supplies. According to reports from Radio Liberty, the city had recently received 5 truckloads of aid intended for people displaced by the war and residents living in areas near the front lines. The targeted locations were specifically designated for the distribution of this relief material. The warehouse, which housed all the supplies, was engulfed in fire, leading to the total loss of the aid. The estimated value of the destroyed goods is around $3 million. The attack occurred on the night of June 13th and was the result of the deployment of 14 Russian Shahed-type drones. In addition to the warehouse, the attack caused damage to civilian infrastructure and private vehicles. 2 law enforcement personnel were also injured during the incident. Operations at several major Russian airports were temporarily halted, according to reports from Russian media citing the country's Federal Air Transport Agency. The initial disruptions were noted at Kaluga Airport, with subsequent restrictions mentioned at both Vnovko and Sheremetyevo airports in Moscow. No official explanation was provided for the sudden operational suspension. However, both Vnovko and Sheremetyevo reportedly resumed normal activity around 3 p.m. Kyiv time, as stated by the agency. Ukrainian military officials have denied recent claims that Russian forces have crossed into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, contradicting a report by the New York Times which cited unnamed Ukrainian military sources. On June 13th, Viktor Tregobov, a spokesperson for Ukraine's Khortytsia military group, stated that there was no confirmation of any Russian presence beyond the administrative border of the oblast. He added that the situation remained stable as of that date, although further intelligence might clarify developments later. The Russian Defense Ministry previously claimed on June 8th that its forces had moved into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, but Ukrainian authorities have not verified the assertion. The Ukrainian group Deep State also reported no indication of Russian ground movement into the region. Their situational map shows that Russian units are still positioned a few kilometers short of the administrative line. 12 regions across Russia have implemented penalties targeting individuals who share visual or written accounts of damage resulting from Ukrainian drone strikes. In the Kaluga region, authorities have submitted 42 cases to local courts related to breaches of a directive from the Regional Emergency Coordination Body, which forbids publishing information about the aftermath of drone incidents. Media outlets were cited in 2 of these cases. Fines under the relevant administrative statute range from 3,000 to 200,000 rubles, depending on the circumstances. One documented case occurred in the Tula region at the end of May, where an individual received a 25,000 ruble fine for sharing footage of a drone strike via Telegram. Although other regions have officially adopted similar bans, including Astrakhan, Vladimir, Volgograd, Ivanovo, Kursk, Leningrad, and Tver, along with St. Petersburg, fines in those regions have not yet been enforced. Up next, we have economy and aid. Israel has transferred Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine through an arrangement brokered by the United States, according to Israeli ambassador to Ukraine, Mikhailo Brodsky. In a recent interview, Brodsky clarified that despite limited public reporting, the transfer had taken place. The systems in question are part of Israel's older MIM-104 Patriot batteries, some of which were upgraded to the Yahalom configuration. These enhancements enabled compatibility with advanced PAC-3 missiles, improving interception capabilities, especially against ballistic threats. Israel began phasing out its Patriot units in early 2024, shifting toward newer domestically developed systems such as David Sling and Iron Dome, which are better suited to current operational needs. By the end of 2023, Israel reportedly maintained at least 8 Patriot batteries, although the total number of launchers remains undisclosed. The systems have seen limited combat use, intercepting various aerial threats since 2014, including drones and Syrian military aircraft. Discussions about transferring decommissioned Israeli Patriots began earlier in 2024. The proposed plan involved moving the systems first to the United States, where they would be refurbished and upgraded before a final delivery to Ukraine. Reports from January indicated that U.S. Air Force transport planes had begun moving associated missile stockpiles, around 90 missiles, from Israeli storage facilities to Poland, with the final destination being Ukrainian forces. Flight tracking data from open-source intelligence projects confirmed the logistical chain, with a U.S. C-17 aircraft operating from Israel's Hatzerim Air Base to Rzhev, Poland, via the Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Norway plans to supply Ukraine with a total of 14 F-16 fighter jets, a significantly higher number than the 6 previously acknowledged by officials. This information comes from Norway's annual report on the import and export of conventional weapons, as cited by Militarny. The report does not provide specifics on the status of the 8 additional aircraft. The extra airframes may not be fully airworthy and could be designated for purposes such as maintenance, training, spare parts, or as non-operational decoys. This approach would be consistent with earlier Norwegian statements that only combat-ready F-16s retired from service would be delivered. It remains unclear whether some of the additional jets have since been refurbished and returned to operational condition. Delivery timelines for the full set of 14 aircraft have not been disclosed. In addition to F-16s, the same report notes the transfer of other military equipment to Ukraine, including 20 Dingo 2 armored vehicles originally manufactured in Germany and 2 NM-189 engineering vehicles based on the Leopard 1 tank chassis. Ukraine has received an additional €1 billion from the European Union through the Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Initiative, using proceeds generated from frozen Russian assets. The Prime Minister of Ukraine confirmed the transfer, noting that it is the fifth installment of macro-financial assistance provided under this program. The funding is intended to support core state budget needs and to help sustain critical government functions amid the ongoing invasion. With this latest disbursement, total support extended to Ukraine through the ERA initiative now amounts to 7 billion euros, according to the Prime Minister. The U.S. House Appropriations Committee has approved its draft of the fiscal year 2026 defense spending bill, totaling $832 billion US, but without including an additional $300 million in proposed security assistance for Ukraine. The omission follows a contentious debate over the amendment, which was introduced by Representative Marcy Kaptur of Ohio and ultimately rejected in a voice vote. The committee's version maintains the same overall budget figure as fiscal year 2025, in line with guidance from the Office of Management and Budget. That office aims to raise total defense spending to $1 trillion US through a separate reconciliation bill that has yet to be passed. The decision to exclude the Ukraine-related funding was driven by concerns that its inclusion could jeopardize the entire defense bill, potentially leading some Republican lawmakers to withdraw their support. The bill passed out of a committee by a vote of 36 to 27 and now moves to the House for consideration. The United Nations World Food Program has announced the extension of its supplemental payment initiative for vulnerable Ukrainians through the end of July. The program, run in coordination with Ukraine's Ministry of Social Policy and the Pension Fund, targets pensioners, individuals who do not qualify for pensions, and people with disabilities. Each month, over 315,000 beneficiaries receive financial support under this scheme, with a total monthly disbursement amounting to 216 million hryvnia. The assistance functions to ensure that recipients' total monthly income reaches at least a level of 3,250 hryvnia. The payments are processed automatically, requiring no separate application or registration. Eligible individuals receive the funds through the same channel used for their existing pension or social assistance payments, via either bank card or the National Postal Service, Ukrposhta. Naftogaz Ukraine's European trading subsidiary has been officially certified for biomethane trading, marking a significant step in the company's strategy to expand its role in the growing sector. Speaking at the Energy Day 2025 conference organized by the European Business Association in Kyiv, the head of business development emphasized that the company views biomethane as a key area for growth due to the existing infrastructure available to support its production, storage, and transport. Naftogaz Trading Europe AG, which handles the group's trading activities in the EU, now offers offtake contracts to biomethane producers on standard market terms. Kostyuk highlighted that Naftogaz provides a full-service model, supporting producers from the initial plant connection to the gas network through to purchasing their output. The initiative aims to incentivize private investment in the biomethane production industry by simplifying logistics and commercial processes. While Ukrainian law currently restricts biomethane exports to producers only, Naftogaz can purchase it domestically and then resell it through its European arm, providing producers with an easier and more cost-effective alternative to working with foreign traders. To further facilitate market development, Naftogaz has established a dedicated service center within the gas distribution networks of Ukraine LLC to support prospective biomethane producers. The company is actively seeking to expand its supplier base and integrate more production facilities into the national and European gas networks. As of now, 4 biomethane facilities are operating in Ukraine, including one producing bio-LNG. 3 additional plants, one of which will also produce bio-LNG, are expected to launch in 2025. Ukrainian biomethane exports began in February of 2025, signaling the country's entry into the European renewable gas market. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed 2 new laws aimed at supporting domestic production of drones that use fiber optic cable for operation, an important category of unmanned systems used by the country's defense forces. The law introduces amendments to the Customs Code exempting fiber optic components imported for defense-related drone manufacturing from import duties. In parallel, another law modifies the tax code to waive the value-added tax on the same category of imported goods. These measures are designed to ease the financial and logistical burden on Ukrainian drone manufacturers, particularly as fiber optic components remain largely sourced from abroad. Drones operating via fiber optic links are highly resistant to electronic warfare measures, making them strategically important for battlefield operations where electronic interference is prevalent. The laws aim to boost local production capabilities by lowering the cost and complexity of sourcing critical components. A group of aircraft leasing companies, including AerCap and Dubai Aerospace Enterprises, has won a landmark $4.7 billion legal case against several major insurers over planes stranded in Russia following its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in early 2022. The ruling, delivered by the High Court in London, marks one of the largest insurance disputes ever heard in the UK. In a 230-page judgment, Mr. Justice Butcher found that the aircraft were effectively lost as of March 2022 due to actions taken by the Russian government, not simply decisions by Russian airlines. The ruling holds war risk insurers, including AIG, Lloyd's, Chubb, and Swiss Re, liable for covering the losses. The judgment emphasized that the trigger for the insurer's liability was a Russian legislative act issued on March 10, 2022, which prohibited the export of aircraft and related equipment, effectively nationalizing the leased aircraft. The central legal question was whether the losses resulted from commercial choices by Russian carriers in which general all risks insurance would apply, or from state actions which would trigger war risk coverage. The court concluded that the Russian government's orders constituted a direct cause of loss, making the war risk policies applicable. The case involved 147 aircraft and 16 separate engines that leasing firms were unable to recover. AerCap, the world's largest aircraft leaser, claimed compensation for 116 aircraft and 15 engines, while DAE pursued claims for 22 aircraft, recovering only 3 before the remainder were deemed unrecoverable. Additional claimants included Falcon, Genesis, Merckx Aviation, and KDAC Aviation Finance, all with operations in Dublin. The London decision comes alongside a separate €2.5 billion case in the Irish High Court, where most claims have either been settled or are in the process of being resolved. Butcher stated that insurers are not restricted by Western sanctions from paying out on these claims, removing a key legal obstacle. His ruling described the case as exceptionally complex, and he expressed hope that both sides could now agree on a formal order for compensation. Up next, we have international relations. A court in Pskov has ordered Russian opposition politician Lev Schloberg to be placed under house arrest for 2 months in connection with criminal charges related to alleged repeated discrediting of the Russian military. The proceedings were held behind closed doors, and the case was reported by the independent outlet Sodavision. Schloberg, deputy chairman of the Yabloko party, is one of the few remaining opposition figures still politically active in Russia. The charges stem from a video of a public debate between Schloberg and historian Yuri Pivovarov, in which Schloberg advocated for an immediate ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. Authorities claim that the act of sharing the video constituted a criminal offense under laws prohibiting criticism of the military's role in Ukraine. Schloberg denies being responsible for uploading the video or managing the account that published it. Prior to his court appearance, police searched both his apartment and the residence of his 96-year-old father. He was detained and held overnight in a temporary facility. Russia has reportedly transferred critical military technology to North Korea, enabling Pyongyang to begin domestic production of Shahed-type unmanned aerial vehicles and significantly enhancing the accuracy of its short-range ballistic missile systems. According to Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Chief Kirill Budanov, this partnership marks a major development in regional security dynamics, particularly in relation to South Korea. Budanov stated that agreements are in place for North Korea to begin producing UAVs modeled on Iran's Shahed-131 and Shahed-136 drones, known in Russian service as the Geran and Garpia. These drones have played a central role in Russia's long-range attack capabilities during its war in Ukraine, with production currently around 2,000 units per month and expected to increase significantly. Their deployment has become a regular part of Russian operation, with hundreds being launched in mass waves, including a recent barrage of 479 drones and decoys over a 2-day period. Beyond unmanned systems, Budanov detailed that Russian expertise has also been used to drastically improve North Korea's KN-23 ballistic missiles. Once considered imprecise and unreliable, these systems have reportedly been refined into highly accurate tactical strike weapons. This transformation was attributed to direct collaboration between Russian and North Korean technical teams, significantly boosting Pyongyang's conventional military capabilities. Russian support has also expanded into areas involving nuclear delivery systems and submarine launch missile platforms. North Korea, previously limited by its inability to effectively integrate its nuclear arsenal with operational delivery systems, is now receiving assistance to redress these deficiencies. Russian specialists are said to be helping with the development of submarine-based launch capabilities and refining aviation technologies, including air-to-air missile systems with extended range and improved targeting systems. In addition to weapons transfers and technical support, North Korean troops are currently present inside Russian territory. Budanov confirmed that around 11,000 North Korean personnel are stationed in Kursk. North Korea has also supplied Russia with a wide array of artillery systems, including D-74 howitzers, multiple rocket launchers, and long-range self-propelled guns like the M1989 Koksan. Russia reportedly acquired 120 of these and expects further deliveries due to their performance in combat scenarios. Budanov also highlighted labor migration. Following a high-level Russian visit to Pyongyang, Plans were initiated to replace Central Asian migrant workers in Russia with North Korean laborers, citing security concerns. These workers could later be incorporated into Russia's military framework under contract, effectively serving as combat personnel of North Korean origin. Ukrainian intelligence is currently assessing the extent and structure of this emerging labor exchange program. NATO fighter jets assigned to the alliance's air policing mission in the Baltic region were deployed on 3 separate occasions last week to intercept and monitor Russian military aircraft that were not adhering to international aviation rules. According to the Lithuanian Ministry of Defense, these intercepts occurred due to Russian aircraft operating without filed flight plans and failing to maintain radio communication with regional air traffic controllers. On June 3rd, NATO aircraft responded to the presence of 2 Russian Su-30SM fighter jets. Later that same day, Allied jets were again scrambled to identify an Su-33 fighter and Su-24MR reconnaissance aircraft flying in international airspace originating from mainland Russia. A further deployment occurred on June 4th when NATO fighters were dispatched to monitor 2 additional Su-30 jets, conducting flights from and returning to Russia's Kaliningrad Oblast, also in international airspace. And last item this week, Ukraine has conducted its 4th prisoner exchange with Russia in a single week, continuing a coordinated effort to repatriate both living service members and the remains of fallen soldiers. President Zelensky announced the June 14th exchange, noting that many of those freed had been held since 2022 and include personnel from multiple branches of Ukraine's security forces. This series of exchanges follows an agreement reached during negotiations in Istanbul earlier this month, where both sides committed to a phased process involving wounded and ill prisoners and the return of deceased personnel. The latest group of freed Ukrainians primarily consists of seriously injured or chronically ill soldiers, many of whom were captured during the 2022 defense of Mariupol. Most are officers and some are under 25 years old. According to the Coordination Headquarters for Prisoners of War, these individuals served on multiple fronts, including Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, Kherson, Kharkiv, Sumy, and Kursk. Prior exchanges on June 10th and 12th also prioritized individuals with serious health concerns. The exact number of those released has not been publicly disclosed. As part of the Istanbul Agreement, Russia pledged to return the bodies of up to 6,000 deceased Ukrainian service members. In the days following the deal, Ukraine recovered the remains of 2,412 individuals on June 11th and 13th, and a further 1,200 on the 14th. The Coordination Center for the Treatment of Prisoners of War reported that these fallen soldiers came from various combat zones. Russian negotiator Vladimir Medensky confirmed that Ukraine returned 27 bodies to Russia under the same arrangement. Ukraine continues to advocate for a full-scale all-for-all prisoner exchange, aiming to bring every captured Ukrainian home. However, this proposal has so far been rejected by Russia. Russia has accused Ukraine of delaying certain aspects of the agreed exchanges, including collecting bodies already delivered to designated exchange points. Ukrainian officials responded by accusing Moscow of distorting facts and engaging in bad faith behavior around the exchanges. Zelensky expressed optimism that the current round of exchanges could be completed by June 20th or 21st, and preparations for further releases are ongoing. And that's it for the main headlines this week. We will now move to the next segment.
Yeah, and that will be my segment. Hello guys, as always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. We are starting with the announcement that Germany has funded the repairs at 2 Ukrainian educational institutions. On Tuesday, the United Nations Development Programme has announced that the German government has co-funded a UNDP project which led to the repair and reconstruction of a school in Starichi in the Lviv Oblast. After their school was severely damaged in 2022, 358 students and 90 staff members can now finally go to school in person again. The school was not only restored to pre-war condition, but significantly improved. The school's air raid shelter was modernized and is now fully equipped with a new flooring, lighting, ventilation, and sanitary facilities. Other improvements include new drainage system, a renovated science lab, craft workshop, an art room, and gym spaces. On Friday, they also announced that the German government has co-funded the reconstruction of another institution, this time a kindergarten in Kremenchuk in the Poltava Oblast, which was damaged due to a Russian attack. All windows were replaced with new energy-efficient ones, while the damaged ceilings inside the kindergarten were also repaired. In addition, the entire basement area was refurbished and preparing it for potential use as a shelter during air raid alerts. And last but not least, very good news. On Friday, the 540th Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade announced on their Facebook page that they recently received their first Iris TSLM fire unit and destroyed 7 Russian cruise missiles during their first operation, thereby breaking the previous hold unit record immediately. A well-informed source was able to confirm the delivery itself and other details to me independently of the announcement by the Ukrainian Air Force unit. That means that Germany has now finally delivered their 7th Iris TSLM fire unit, of course, including 2 additional Iris TSLS launchers to Ukraine since the start of the Russian full-scale invasion. So very, very good news. And yeah, that's it for my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Germany to Ukraine. So before we move to the next segment, I did want to ask you about one little thing, which was, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, we had like a bit of an incident. And I kind of wanted to dissect it as an example of like misinformation or bad information getting around at a faster speed than like correct information, I guess. So you can maybe have a better grasp of the specifics than me, but I want to say about 2 weeks ago, someone mistranslated a German speech and basically was like, aha, Taurus is coming, to Ukraine. And then a bunch of people on social media ran with that. And eventually it kind of filtered up the chain until like it was basically being echoed by more reputable publications and things like that. And this week, finally, someone in the German government basically said, and by the way, I should mention, you were saying at that time, like, it's not true. This is a mistranslation. Like, nothing, there's no evidence that this is true. And finally, this week, someone in the German government clarified, yeah, it's not true. Definitely not true. So I just wanted to, go through what happened and as an example of other things like this, where we see incorrect information that's tempting for people to click on, managing to outrun the accurate information that should be widely available.
Yeah, it's with Taurus, it has been going on for a long, very long time, and they of course asked again, what's up, and the German Minister of Defense now finally said we are not considering a delivery to Ukraine, which is, to be honest, kind of weird to me, given that about 2 weeks ago, both Zelensky and Merz independently went on German TV and said that it's still on the table, that they're still discussing about it. So something, if that's really true, what he said, and it's not just, something to throw people off, then something must have happened in the recent 2 weeks, to be honest, because 2 weeks ago everything was still on the table apparently, and some people now, of course, I would consider myself a very reliable source most of the time, so people like me are just accepting this like it is right now. Some other people are always looking at the bright side, to put it in a good way. They immediately went out and said yeah, that means that Taurus are in Ukraine when they're not even considering anymore. And no, there's why do you even think that? It's it's impossible. We all know that a delivery to Ukraine means integrating the cruise missile into a launch platform, training of Ukrainian soldiers, which takes months, etc., etc. And it's completely impossible given that Merz basically just took office and Scholz prevented everything from happening. So yeah, if we right now at least should consider that Pistorius' statement, so the Ministers of Defense statement, is completely correct, and that means that Ukraine won't receive Taurus, which of course means that Merz, we can swear on Tochnyi, right? We have discussed it over and over again. Yeah, Merz full of shit, of course, and there were some people saying before he got elected he's not going to do it. He's just using it for the elections. To be honest, at least publicly, I wasn't part of that. Behind closed doors, I was a little bit more skeptical of that. But publicly, I was like, yeah, let's see what he does first. And yeah, completely disappointed. And yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a good example of like if there's something you want to be true and people just run around saying it's true with no like you need to look at this, not you, but like people, everyone needs to, including myself. I've fallen for things, you know. You one should look at the sources very carefully. The more you want it to be true, the more you should vet it because yeah, the information economy right now is built on clicks and attention, and it's very easy to just yell something, you know, that people would want to click on. And it's a lot more difficult to carefully vet information as like you do and a lot of other more reputable accounts do. So yeah, just try to trace sources. If someone gives you bad information, it's, in my opinion, like my policy is just like mute them, right? Like shut off that feed of information, because if they're passing bad information, it's more effort to sort through the noise than it is to actually find information these days, right? So yeah, cultivate reliable sources. The more you want something to be true, the more you should make sure it's true before you go around spreading it. Do you have any other general advice about that? Can you like draw any lessons from this most recent Taurus bullshit, sir?
Um, Not specifically lessons. I can just advise people, you know, if you have questions about the topic, they're very good people with very deep knowledge into the situation, into German military aid, etc., which you can always ask. Once, of course, me, you know, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on X. I have an old website with an email address. I have even my Threema link public, so you can always ask me and I reply as fast as possible. And of course others are Fabian Hoffmann, for example, who on Blue Sky and on Twitter, you can always ask him about Taurus stuff. He's very with very deep knowledge about the Taurus topic, or in general like cruise missiles, rockets, and other stuff. So yeah, that's my only advice I can give to you. Just when you see something and it sounds crazy to you at first, maybe it is crazy, and you just ask other people with deep knowledge. There are many accounts which just I see it every time. I know we talked about this, Joseph, sometime. I see, for example, I post something on my social media account, yeah, and like 5-6 minutes later, it appears at some bigger Telegram channels, and then these like Twitter, Telegram copy paste accounts. Not gonna name them now. Are using this information, which is just half as good as I provided originally on X, and a lot of details are missing. They're just copying it from X, so it's, you know, coming from X, going to Telegram, going to X again via other accounts, and most of the people are sadly informing itself about these from these like second X accounts or second Blue Sky accounts, whatever. And that's my only advice. Just go to the source. You know, you don't have to go to me. Just listen to the press conferences yourself if you don't trust me. And yeah, that's my only advice I can give.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks thanks for all the work you do. I mean, you've sort of just taken it upon yourself to be as accurate and have as much integrity as possible. Not every field has that, has an expert like Mr. German Aid to Ukraine. A lot do, though. So yeah, just keep your eyes out for people who consistently give you reliable information. Don't take the tempting, you know, easy click stuff and all that. So yeah, we'll quit harping on that topic, but yeah, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that issue. So up next, do you want to say
something? No, my chair cracked. Sorry.
No problem. Up next, we're going to have a little discussion about the Russian economy and what's going on with that. And it's going to be by Mr. Stanimir, who keeps well appraised of everything going on in the local regions as well as the Russian federal budget. So, Mr. Stanimir, we'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. So we're starting this week with the main news around the Russian budget. So for the first 5 months of the year, Russia has accumulated for the federal budget 3.4 trillion rubles in deficit. The interesting thing here is that revenues for the period were only 3.1% higher than in 2024. And this is not just because oil and gas revenues are down. All the revenues are down from what they targeted, and expenditures are 20.7% higher. Also, the Russian federal budget is going to stop subsidizing domestic electronics producers. This was a key program for them to get enough components and parts for those components to build the domestic industry. It's one of the industries that's been growing the fastest over the last 3 years. So it's going to have a significant effect over 2025. There's good news for Russian agricultural producers because the program for preferential lending to agricultural producers to buy equipment is going to be revised. They're raising the subsidy from 50% of the interest rate by the Russian central bank to 70%. So it's going to lower the interest on such loans from 12.5% to 7%. But again, that comes with the trade-off that they're going to cut other subsidies because they don't have enough money to subsidize everything. When it comes to lending in Russia, Russian banks last week, after the interest rate cut by 1%, said that they're not expecting lending to revitalize significantly. This is mainly due to the fact that not only was the interest rate increased, there were also macroprudential measures placed on banks to limit their lending. So they can't lend with people with existing loans of more than 2 or 3 loans, which were the main customers of banks when it comes to lending in Russia. Also, Russian pawn shops released data that in 2024 they had 302 billion rubles in loans issued, which is much higher than the 2023 figure of 239 billion rubles. And their profit grew up by 73%. But again, it's a small figure, up to 8.8 billion rubles. When it comes to commodities, Russia managed to export more coal to China in May than in May 2024. The increase is by 7.2% for thermal coal, and this is the highest figure since the start of 2024. It's 1.8 times greater than April 2025. Also, the Japanese oil refining company, Taiyo Oil, managed to receive a shipment of 600,000 barrels of oil from Sakhalin via a Russian tanker that is under both US and EU sanctions. This is the first such case in the last 2 years, so that's definitely a change. In the construction market, depths of housing developers, so depths of people who bought housing from Russian big real estate developers that build big apartment buildings, are now up to 1 trillion rubles. So there is a scheme under which Russian real estate developers actually offer you an installment plan. They take the risk that you don't finish paying that installment plan and they have to resell the apartment to someone else. This used to be 10 to 20% of the market in previous years. Now it's up to 40% of the market for new housing and apartment buildings. So this is the one way that Russian real estate developers are sidestepping bank mortgages, which are now unaffordable for people. When it comes to Russian office building, the buildings that are currently in construction have turned out to be 14% more expensive than already built buildings. Now, this is due to the growing construction costs in Russia, as well as the lack of available office space within Russia. That's one of their big sectors in the construction industry that's still growing. Everything else, I think, apart from luxury housing, isn't growing. Those are the two only that are growing significantly. When it comes to interesting data points this week from Russia, we see that alcohol production for alcohol outside of beer, mead, so your vodkas, gins, is down for the first 5 months by 20.5%. Weak alcohol production from this sector is down by 92.9%, and vodka production is down 13.2%. Strong alcohol, that is alcohol over 9%, alcohol by volume, is down 12.1%. And this is again talking to the fact that the Russians who had their salaries increased over the last 2 years are now again priced out of legal alcohol. So the lower strata are now going back to buying illegal alcohol, moonshine, or things that are alcohol-like. Again, not a good development for Russians overall. Also, Russian funeral services are going faster than before and faster than the official inflation, even when some of the things that you're buying for funerals, like headstones, are now much cheaper because there are Chinese alternatives to Russian producers. So they're growing at 12.7% for the first 4 months of the year compared to 2024. And in 2023, the growth was only 9%. So this is a significant increase in the growth rate of the market, despite there being now cheaper options for some of the tools for and some of the grave sites with new companies entering the market. And when it comes to inflation and debt, at the end, inflation for the last week was only 0.03%. That is for the week that was reported on Wednesday this week. This is the first significant sign that we can say that Russian inflation in 2025 is starting to be lower than 2024. However, we have to say that in the next 2 weeks, we expect the utilities prices to be increased by over 10%. So that should impact inflation by another, I think, over 1%, 1.3, something like that, in terms of the overall inflation. So we're going to hit 5% again. So they're far off from the previous targets of 4.5%. And also the debt issues from the Russian Ministry of Finance this week. The first one came in at a yield of 15.48%, so it didn't seem to be affected by the lowering of the interest rate, as it was on the same level as in the previous week. They managed to borrow almost 140 billion rubles. The second issue, however, was much lower at 14.86%, but from that issue, they managed to borrow only 11.9 billion rubles, again, due to likely the shortage of candidates who want to buy debt at such a low yield. And that's it for the most important news stories from the Russian economy from this week.
Well, thanks, Stanimir. So there was a minor report about some unrest in a Russian region. I was just seeing in Altai there was a protest, I think, about some local politics that's going on. Is there any other I don't know, significant social unrest? Because you mentioned that it sounds like the indicators that are a little bit less macro level, like loans and things like that, and alcohol consumption, they kind of point towards maybe some things under the surface. So I don't know. Is there anything? Do you see any evidence that those indicators are starting to express real unrest, or do you think that it's still the situation's still largely stable in Russia?
Well, it's largely stable, but there are individual issues where you have serious problem. One of them is public transport, as we mentioned before several times. Another thing that should be mentioned is the pharmacies that sell subsidized medication. They're running out of medication and they're usually queues. So that's another source for regional instability that people are complaining about. And again, the other thing that's been around for the last 2 years is utilities are unreliable in Russia as a whole, outside of, let's say, Moscow. Even St. Petersburg is not reliable when it comes to utilities or street cleaning during the winter.
Yeah,
but so far,
it's good.
Yeah, but so far I don't think we have seen something major, but we should expect it because, again, even if they increase the payments for pensioners in terms of Russian pensions, that increase is only to match the official inflation according to Rosstat, whereas even official food inflation according to Rosstat is 5% higher than the official inflation. It's low because the non-food goods are only at 5% in terms of price growth in the annual terms. So I don't think they can sit on that for too long, because salaries and pensions are diverging significantly. And I have to say that Russia has 75 million workers in its workforce, but it also has 42 million pensioners. And they have to balance those pensioners because unrest from them goes down to the rest of the families, and they're Putin's constituency.
Right, all those grandmas love Putin, man. So yeah, it's a very core constituency of Putin's these older pensioners, and their large population in Russia. Yeah, so I don't know, any other thoughts about I guess any concluding thoughts for this week? You mentioned it's a bit of a light week, but we'll do our best to keep everyone updated in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I expect in the future we're going to see more subsidized programs, but they're going to hit only, let's say, the car industry and the truck industry, whereas the existing subsidies for other sectors are going to be cut because they don't have that much money to juggle around. And also what we've seen this week with oil might turn out to be temporary in terms of the demand being more depressed due to the reduction in trade. Then it's going to be exacerbated by the conflict that's going on right now in the Middle East.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for the updates, Stanimir. As you know, you're always welcome to share any updates you have for us about what's going on with the Russian economy. So we'll now move to the question and answer period. As Mr. Germany to Ukraine mentioned, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them up in chat, and we'll do our best to address them. We got a few questions. We might as well hit on something that is related to this topic. So Matt Kirk asks, who funds the Russian budget deficit? Presumably not the West. Is it China? So, yeah, Stanimir, if you want to address that.
China doesn't have any interest in funding the Russian budget deficit so far. They're not providing loans to Russia. They're not providing too much in investment. Most of the Chinese companies are looking at Russia as a temporary market. They just want to make big profits and leave. That's also true for the car market. When you talk to Russian officials just below the federal level, so people like Mayor Sobyanin of Moscow, they openly say that they're in an economic war with China. That's also echoed by KAMAZ, the biggest truck producer in Russia, and by Avtovaz, which produces Lada. What is funding the budget deficit so far has been borrowing from Russian domestic financial institutions, so banks, pension funds. Because the official inflation is much lower than the interest on the debt, they can quickly buy the debt and say that, look, we made a profit beyond the inflation. And also the Russian central bank is helping by facilitating repo deals with the Russian central bank, which currently still has some resources for that. So now they're doing a weekly repo with the Russian banks where they lend them close to $1 trillion rubles every week. The other source is the Russian National Welfare Fund, National Wealth Fund, not welfare. That is the last resort for Russia to fund its budget deficit. Its liquid part is down to 2.84 trillion rubles. So if they want to fund the existing deficit, they have to find additional sources. And another thing we have to mention is that in the weird accounting that Russia has, the budget borrowing is seen as a revenue and not a deficit. So this year they might borrow 4 or 5 trillion rubles in terms of domestic debt and expensive debt at that, at 15% or more. And that's all going to be seen as revenue. The deficit is only what's left unfunded after that. So they're going to see probably over 3 trillion in debt, 3 trillion in deficit that has to be funded in some way. And I'm guessing they're going to either accelerate borrowing or just use up all of the National Wealth Fund, the entirety of it, all of the liquid part. They're trying to do some privatizations, but it's usually a scheme where they nationalize a company and then find a buyer from the people connected to the government, which have ties to strong political figures in the government. So they buy it, and that's how they get some revenue to the budget, but that's just a form of theft from the public.
Gotcha. And I guess like just some clarifying stuff, and you can correct any of this if I'm mistaken. But when we talk about a Russian budget deficit or shortfall, usually what we're referring to, it works a little differently than in like a country like the United States or in Europe, where what they're talking about is the Russian government has like pre-budgeted or pegged the price of oil at a certain level, and sometimes it goes above that, sometimes it goes below that. If it goes above that, that's good for them. It means that they've got like extra government revenue. If it goes below that, then it's a big problem, and that's kind of what's happened to them this time. So there is like a deficit. There, like, obviously, there's a few ways to talk about deficit, but I'm just saying sometimes when the media talks about a deficit, they're talking about that shortfall between what Russia thought it was going to get versus what it actually is going to get. And a lot of times they can iron that out, as you said, with the sovereign wealth fund. But I think now the sovereign wealth fund, as I understand it, is sort of just, it's almost at this point just a big pile of gold, right? Like that's most of what they have left. Is that like a very liquid, they can still sort of use that, or what would you say?
They can sort of use that, but yes, it's just a big pile of gold. But they can find buyers, again, because part of the financial sector of Russia is dominated by state companies, which are run as private companies, but have, let's say, significant state ownership. They can find ways to buy them, to buy that gold. But yeah, you have to also say that because these are run as personal thieves, people like Kostin or German Gref, the CEOs of VTB and Sberbank, they're out there to make money for Sberbank. They're not out there to actually bail out the Russian government unless it looks like the entire system will collapse. So for now, they're going to be focusing on profits. So that liquid part might need to be reduced a bit when it comes to selling it.
Okay, gotcha. So that seems like it's their two remaining financial. That's sort of how they deal with the current budget deficit, right? They have a pile of gold, and they have a few really big, powerful companies that specialize in like pretty fungible goods that they can sort of use to prop up any discrepancies between what they expect to earn versus what they earn. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, they don't seem to be receiving any help from outside. I mean, apart from what North Korea is offering, but North Korea isn't going to offer them cash they can use. I don't think people should look at China and see it as a savior of Russia in terms of finances. And the last thing is that an example of that was when there was the Victory Day parade and Z from China came over, they signed 0 agreements, nothing significant. That's the extent to which the two systems are separated economically, even though people talk about some alliance or joint cause. They're not helping them at all.
Yeah. So thanks for that question, and thanks for the answer, of course, Stanimir. So we have a couple other questions. This is kind of related, I think. So Kathy mentions the price of gold is through the roof. Does this help Russia? And I think we could broaden that question out a bit. Obviously, we don't want to talk in any detail about what's going on between Israel and Iran, but it does have some implications for the energy market. So I guess like maybe a more general question. It's a bit of an uncertain time geopolitically, as it were. Certain goods like gold and oil are going up in value, or if they do, does that helps Russia, right?
Yes, it helps Russia, but the second part of that equation is it doesn't help Russia as much as, let's say, 6 months ago. Because right now, because of the reduced imports, there's a strong Russian ruble, which is the reason why the previous calculations for the price of, let's say, gold or the price of oil aren't viable, because the Russian ruble is too strong and the Russian budget is being paid in rubles. So they have to find something extra even at this high price.
Gotcha. So they're really facing the problem that their economy is kind of fundamentally incompatible with like the global economy and also the Chinese economy, or like, you know, it's just they can't really interface well with other economies. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, China isn't making them any deals. For example, one of the reasons Russian coal is suffering and it's such a big news that exports to China went up is because in 2023, China introduced an import tariff on Russian coal to defend its domestic sector.
Gotcha. So yeah, we'll maybe try to do a different question, give Stanimir a rest here. Someone asked about Sapson. So there was a report about Sapson this week from Ukraine. They mentioned that it was, I believe, combat tested, and it was like basically the general like news headline about it was like better than ATACMS. That's Sapson. So here's what I know about it. I'm not a missile expert. We don't really have anyone qualified. We don't have Colby here this week because the universe knew that we needed him. And so, of course, it wouldn't let us have him. So here's what I hear the guys talk about with Sapson and some sort of stuff I remember. So Sapson was one of many programs that the Ukrainians had cooking back like, I don't know, a decade ago. And they were like, we're going to build a bunch of missiles. They're going to be good missiles that we can like export in the global export market. And that's going to kind of offset the cost of us building like a bajillion different missiles. So they started working on all these missiles. And as far as I understand, like, 2014 happened, Russia basically invaded, and their priorities changed a lot. The whole situation kind of became different. Most of those programs were like abandoned or cut back heavily. So Sapson was one of those that was like basically a missile that was almost finished, that was kind of left, in a storage room somewhere in Ukraine. And they had gotten to the point, as far as I understand, one of the Ukrainians I know of who knows something about this stuff mentioned that he believes that there was like a launch vehicle shown at a parade in Ukraine. Like that's how far along. So it was pretty far along, the Sapson missile, when they stopped. But stop they did. And even that 400 kilometer range, I don't know. I think that was maybe like a limit by an international treaty. I think it might be further than that. Anyway, the question I think ultimately is Sapson better than ATACMS as just a general point of comparison? Again, I'm not a missile expert, but from what I heard from the missile guys, the answer is yes. It's like it has a bigger payload. It can, hit more stuff than an ATACMS could. Of course, that's not the be all end all of everything. Like just because a missile is bigger and stronger doesn't make it like automatically a better missile. But on paper, from what I've heard from the missile experts at Tochnyi, Sapson is a very good missile, and it's on paper better than ATACMS. So that's what we know about it. They said it was combat tested. I'll do my best to like really twist John's arm and try to get like a little like recording of what we know about it and the more recent developments on it. And we'll get a real missile person to talk about Sapson. But that's my general understanding. Maurice, do you know anything else about Sapson that you wanted to mention?
No, you're definitely asking the wrong guy here.
Yeah. It's a bit of a mystery. We don't know, like not a lot has been publicly disclosed by Ukraine. It's mostly like you have to piece together like little bits of information here and there about like what happened and where it is now. But that's the best. I'm, again, not an expert. I'm just going off of like secondhand information I heard at this point, like 2 years ago. I probably am forgetting some things and not remembering some things correctly, but that's like the general story of Sapson. And it's a success story. Ukraine seems to have successfully managed to take their unfinished missile, finish it, and get it into production and field testing. And now they're using it, and it's a great it's good that they have that strike capability. So yeah, that's pretty much I think all about the Sapson I can say.
If you allow, I would directly state the same person and just say something about this, if you allow. So I do understand that people like feel very angry about Scholz and criticize him a lot and say that he didn't support Ukraine as he should have had. And I absolutely agree. There's nothing to argue about that. Absolutely. However, I have some issues when they say that he's like pro-Russian or collaborator or whatever, right? That's clearly not true. And I just want to make that clear, not only from a German standpoint, but that goes for a lot of people. I mean, when you look at Germany, he could have done a lot less than Germany, or he has, right? I mean, he's the chancellor. He could have prevented. Same with Taurus. He could have prevented a lot of things. Ultimately, because at the end he decides as chancellor of Germany, and you have to imagine Germany gave many Patriot equipment to Ukraine, missiles to Ukraine, and I mean, Zelensky just said it a couple of days ago. No one, not even the US, has provided Ukraine with more Patriot equipment than Germany, and Germany has like 12 operational units before the war, right? Or before the full-scale invasion started. The US had how many, Joseph? 80, 90, whatever, like 100 or something like this. And Germany has given more, right? And from the Germans' perspective, we were the only ones, and I think still the only ones, who were ready and prepared, and we did so to fund US Army equipment in the US for Ukraine. Nobody else did that. Germany was the highest contributor to the Czech ammunition initiative in 2024 by far. I'm just going to share my screen very quick. That's a part of a project on my website. You can see that Germany by far has taken in the most medical patients from Ukraine, like civilians and soldiers, provided them with medical care in Germany. And you see other big nations like France and Italy, for example, doing a tenth of what Germany is doing, not even 30% of a country like Netherlands. It's quite pathetic, to be honest. So, and of course, Germany has provided, apart from Patriot and other stuff, a lot of military equipment. I mean, we're currently talking about something around 15 billion euros since 2022. Of course, that's not a lot, and I absolutely agree. We should have done much, much more. I mean, when you see how much money the German government was contributing to COVID-19 related measures, for example, we're talking about hundreds of billions of euros, right, within the same time frame. Absolutely agree. We should do more, but given that, for example, Germany in 2024 has given more military aid than France since 2022 in all years combined, and Germany did that alone in one single year. Yeah, I think that speaks volumes, and I think that also says that Scholz, although he should have done much, much more, and I don't agree with him on a lot of things, and I think he was driven by fear, which is very, very dangerous, and prevented a lot of assistance. Also, prevented that assistance could have come to Ukraine much, much faster than it originally has. I mean, we debated for so long about so unnecessary things. It's insane. But to call him a collaborator or say he's pro-Russian, as many people do, and I'm not trying to, insult you or whatever. Don't get me wrong. Everyone has the right to have their own opinion. I'm just saying it's wrong. It's clearly wrong, and I think it's time for people to acknowledge that Scholz has done many, many great things for Ukraine, and they still can, be pissed at him, as I'm doing, right? I can acknowledge that he's done very, very good things for Ukraine. He's done more than many, many others. I mean, when we look at just comparing Germany to France, because France is, I think, in Europe at least, a very comparable nation, right? And in terms what actually has done for Ukraine, Germany has done much, much more than France has. And people are not bitching as much about Macron because he's giving great speeches, and of course he's giving strategic assistance, in my opinion. We have spoken about this in the past many times, that, for example, in the topic which is very important to many people, like the cruise missiles, for example, Macron has done great, right? He has immediately said, yeah, fine, let's do it, no restrictions, whatever, and he's just given them. That's very, very good PR points. And as Scholz, to be honest, has shit his pants with a lot of things which are important to many people, and a lot of stuff which is not getting reported a lot in the media and which is not important to many people in general. He's giving away a lot of PR points and all that big talk. Just want to say once again, I absolutely agree. Scholz should have done much, much more, and you can be pissed about Scholz, but he did a lot for Ukraine, much, much more than many others. Not everyone, but many others. And I just wanted to highlight that once again, and just to finish the second question. But I think the state of Taurus would be not be different with Habeck in power, and also the Grüne has a problem with their politics being ridiculated by many and not just the AfD. I think that completely depends on the reason why Taurus isn't in Ukraine. I mean, you can say about Merz, for example, he has said in the opposition he would provide Taurus to Ukraine many times. He has done in late 2024, for example, said that with a 24-hour ultimatum, right? He has said he's going to say to Putin, stop the bombings on civilian infrastructure and civilians. If you don't do that, Taurus is coming to Ukraine within 24 hours, or at least he's going to announce the delivery or the pledge in 24 hours. And he's done nothing in the end. And we're currently at, we're not considering that. However, Habeck as well as Baerbock, both from the Greens, were at the government at this time, and they still said they would send, and they have voted to send Taurus to Ukraine when Scholz said no. So in my opinion, they would have definitely done it, unless right now, and that's the thing which we don't know about, that's pure speculation. So everyone, pure speculation, unless, for example, that the US, the Trump administration, is the reason why Merz can't deliver it to Ukraine, because they need permission from the US administration due to important equipment inside Taurus. And when, for example, Trump says, no, you're not getting it because of escalation, whatever, then Merz can, do nothing. He can't send it. So the only logical explanation which wouldn't damage Merz's reputation, in my opinion, why he wouldn't send it, is that the Trump administration is preventing that. And of course, that wouldn't be different with Habeck. Then, of course, with Habeck as chancellor, you also wouldn't be able to send it. And the only thing I from my perspective say I would love to see, if that's actually the case, that Merz goes public and says we want to, but we are not allowed to. The US prevents it. I can see why he doesn't do it. I mean, Trump has the ego of a baby, right? So shouldn't do that unless you want Trump to cry for 5 hours in a corner and then come up with sanctions, Germany being the baddest country in the world, whatever he is going to say. So I see why he doesn't do that, if that's the case. But yeah, I want to say, sorry, a long rant, just to say that Scholz is not a collaborator. Sorry.
Well, thanks. And it came from the heart, whether you agree or disagree with them. I think you gotta acknowledge that was a firmly rooted opinion that Mr. Gao put forward. So the next question was to Stanimir. It was, Stanimir, what do you expect are the most important indicators over the next month regarding the Russian economy? What things do you look for?
I think the most important indicator is going to be the civilian industry. So that is the thing that's struggling the most. Last time when we got information about, for example, the auto industry, it was down 14% compared to 2024, which is even worse if you compare it to late 2024. So what we should expect is a contraction in the civilian industry, and a contraction that's going to outweigh the growth in the military industry, which is down from the 14% to now just in the teens. So look for that. And I'll be posting updates every month when the data comes out about the civilian industry growth. That is month to month and also year to year. But that's the most important factor right now, because if that collapses, all the growth that they have achieved in the last 2 or 3 years is just hollow growth. The moment that they stop refurbishing equipment at the same rate and they're just down to new production, or the moment that the production of ammunition, that is finished metal goods, and the official statistics plateaus, everything else will be down. So expect the civilian industry to go into a deep recession.
Okay, I see one other question. If anyone else has any questions, please ask in chat. I think we're starting to wrap up here. So, what are the scenarios where the Russian army could collapse? Also, Crimea seems to be getting a lot of attention from drones. Could like Ukraine be up to something over there? So, Crimea, I think, has always got pretty good attention from drones, or at least in the past it did. There might be periods where it gets more lax or it's reported less, but it's been pretty active the whole time as far as I know. It seems pretty doubtful to me Ukraine could do any kind of like large scale operation regarding Crimea right now. As far as I understand, the like Ukrainian high command, like when they talk about it, they seem pretty like no one's talking about like, oh, we're gonna take Crimea at some point. The focus seems to be on like repelling the immediate Russian offensives going on in Dnipro and in the Sumy area. So yeah, I find it probably unlikely. There's still a lot of weird shenanigans going on around Kherson, right? You've got both sides kind of sending guys over in boats and just getting immediately blown up by drones. We like honestly are like, why do you get in the boats? Like, we don't even understand. It looks so deadly and scary, and like, what's the point? But yeah, that's where I think you are seeing the most like special ops stuff, shenanigans going on right now. Is that river that divides Kherson from the Russian side? Yeah, so scenarios where the Russian army could collapse. This I thought was a much more discussed topic, maybe the first year of the war, especially because Russian casualties were clearly like an order of magnitude worse than anything that we'd seen in like post World War II, basically. Even like Afghanistan, it pales, right? But so far, we haven't seen any kind of systematic collapse of the Russian military. So I would take it with a big grain of skepticism that the Russian army will collapse. As far as I can tell, it still seems very functional in terms of like even though the officers keep getting killed and even though the meat waves keep getting killed, I shouldn't use that bad YouTube word, keep going away. The whole system itself seems to be fundamentally functioning. They manage to find, as long as they keep managing to find manpower to feed it, it will hold together. As far as like historical examples, there's been kind of studies and historical precedents about this stuff. The most likely thing that would happen would be like mass surrenders, or like just like not kind of reacting when the Ukrainians do stuff. It's unusual to have like big large scale mutinies. There have been cases historically in Russia where they like had a big mobilization of the population and people got jammed up in like Moscow or St. Petersburg, and there was like a big piece of social unrest because a bunch of soldiers knew they were going to go to a pointless, crappy war, and they didn't want to, and they were stuck in an important area for too long, and it caused some problems. But overall, I think that the historical precedents are probably not going to come into play here. It seems pretty unlikely. I don't know. Do you, Stanimir, have any thoughts about like this current organizational state of the Russian military and the chance of some kind of a systematic collapse or like a cascade effect where something really bad happens to the coherency of it?
Not when it comes to their tactics currently. They can continue to do that, but right now they're not a modern military. They're ancien regime type of military. So they're reliant not on a national army, they're reliant on impressment of people into the armed forces. And as long as they're enough to be impressed as part of the lower strata of Russia, so they're basically relying on those desperate for money, they can continue at the same churn. If we look at historical examples, I think we have to look to Prussia in the 7 Years' War, where it could continue to maintain that system of recruitment through impressment for a while, including impressment of other armed forces for a while. But again, when it comes to the 7-Year War, they barely got a draw. But that's in the time scale and in terms of being assailed on all sides. So for now, I don't think there's collapse in the way that we expect it, although there's certainly a degradation of the quality of the ordinary Russian soldier. What we're down to is seeing if they can continue to maintain the churn of those losses that they're sustaining in the attacks by such low quality of soldiers in terms of training for most of them, in terms of time spent before being thrown into the fight, and in terms of the tactics they use to just gain ground at any cost. If they can sustain the churn, they can sustain a steady momentum at the expense of everything else in the country. One of the reasons why I said look at the civilian industry is that the civilian industry is struggling to find workers, skilled workers and even unskilled labor, and it's competing with that. Also, the Russian government, in terms of the staffing of the government, in terms of the bureaucracy, is also struggling to find young people to join municipal governments, and it's offering similar pay incentive just for signing up with, let's say, a specific regional government. The entire Russian state is now competing with the Russian military for resources. So that is the side that can decide things, not so much their ability to fight with the current tactics.
Yeah, I would definitely listen to Stanimir. I think his opinion is more nuanced than mine about this, but just I think to try to summarize, like it's a system that's increasingly like closing and looking inward. It's a very old-fashioned like way of doing things, but it has like a certain time-tested brutal effectiveness to it all. So they're sort of slowly eating away at the core of their civilization, but you know they can do that. They can. It will take a long time for it to finally come home to roost ultimately. So that's probably what we're going to see is more of like a slow degradation and entropy versus some kind of wild, or not wild, but like big event that would result in like a collapse. So yeah, I think both Stanimir and I agree on that. Any other questions, Mr. Gao?
Not that I can see. No. A lot of people thanking us for the great stream. Thanks, guys. But apart from that, I don't see any.
I think there was one question about Russia selling gold to India because India produces jewelry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and have we answered the question from Kalendan already?
What was the question?
How much is China helping Russia with respect to weapons production? So, for example,
right.
drone components, etc.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into that just a little bit, and then we'll let Stanimir answer that question about gold. So there was a comment from Zelensky, I want to say 2 weeks ago, that was like, basically the Chinese are selling the Russian stuff, but they're not selling Ukraine stuff. Honestly, I don't know. Like, I'm not the person to ask about that. I'm not someone who's dug into the details, but I haven't heard anyone at the levels of like where these drones are made and produced talking about like I haven't seen the Wild Hornets come out and say, oh, we need these components and China won't sell them to us. Like I've only heard that from Zelensky. I haven't heard that from any other source. So I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that it's pretty easy to get electronic components and stuff from China. They're not, I don't think there's any like systematic state level oversight of what kind of components are going into. These are all dual use civilian components that are widely exported for other things. So I don't know. I'm not sure that the Chinese could, even if they wanted to, stop significant exports of like these parts. And if they could, it would hurt them pretty badly economically to do so. So I doubt it, but you know, Zelensky did say it. I'm not calling him a liar, so I'm sure on some level it's happening, or he wouldn't have said anything. And then, yeah, the one other thing I would mention is the Ukrainians have gotten really, really good at manufacturing most of what they need themselves. They're building their own PCB boards, like they're making their own, like controller chips to run the drones. They're printing most of the parts they need. I think they can probably get motors somewhere besides China. Like Ukraine has gone to great lengths to make sure as much of the drone stuff is produced in Ukraine as possible. And it doesn't look like, if China is restricting their exports, which would be bad, that it's like a fatal blow, like it would otherwise be, because Ukraine has done such a good job of onshoring that production capacity. Yeah, I don't know, Maurice, do you have any kind of general thoughts? Have you heard anything about like drone components from China being less available to Ukrainians in the last few months?
No, absolutely not. The only thing I've had heard was the reporting, and I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't do any research on it, so keep that in mind. Was when Zelensky apparently said that China is banning the export of Mavic 3 drones and similar stuff to the Ukraine armed forces. But again, I've just read that somewhere on a German news ticker, somewhere in German media, and haven't done any research on it.
Yeah, it seems like maybe something very specific happened that Zelensky is referring to, but as far as like on a wider scale, I don't think it's possible or likely that China would significantly like harm like Ukraine's ability to procure drone components. But you know, I'm not an expert in that, and as Maurice said, or as Germany to Ukraine said, we're not well researched on the topic ourselves. Okay, so next question was for Stanimir. India is creating a lot of jewelry these days. Are they buying up Russian gold? I know that the Iranians got a big pile of gold for Shaheds. That was how it was literally in the contract between Russia and Iran. Like, you get a big pile of gold and we get Shahed production and like plans and stuff like that. So is Russia like throwing around gold? Is this stuff being bought up and used in the global economy? What's up with this Russian gold?
It is selling gold. When it comes to India, India is a bigger buyer for them for diamonds, because right now Russian diamonds that are made by Aurosa, which is the biggest diamond producer in Russia and is a state company, are sanctioned. So you can't sell them to the rest of the world. So one of the ways you can do that is sell them to India. India can then cut them and lie about the origin of the diamond, the uncut diamond. But the issue Russia has with selling stuff to India is it doesn't get anything back in return. So one of the big problems in 2024 was that all the oil they sold to India, they couldn't then get the money out of the country easily. So that's a problem for Russia. So it keeps selling stuff to India and it wants to find partners to sell things, but it wants to then transfer the money back to Russia. And especially for things that are being taxed by the minerals extraction tax, you pay that tax at the point where the goods are out of Russia, but not at the point you get paid back and you get the money back. So India as such has become a problem for Russia because there's not that much they want to import from India. Even when it comes to generics of medication, Russia has the incentive to stop imports from India, even though those are cheap medication that are safe to use, because Russia wants to develop its own domestic pharmaceutical industry, even at the expense of breaking Western patents. That's something that they're doing domestically right now for domestic consumption. For example, Ozempic is being produced in Russia under no licensing. So that's why you can sell to India as Russia, but you don't get anything back, or almost anything. That's a big problem for that sale.
Yeah, so excellent points. So yeah, any other questions, Maurice? Did we miss any others?
Yeah, sorry. Try to find it. Yeah, so sorry. Did we answer this question already or not?
Right. I'm sorry. I didn't really. Sometimes I do that. I'm like, well, that question I can change it to this. So I'll try to.
We talked about China and drones. That's why I'm confused right now. If we spoke.
Yeah,
about
I guess we didn't directly talk about China specifically helping Russia. As far as I know, no, we haven't seen any direct like help from China with weapons production. China is like looking the other way. There's lots and lots of this drone stuff that allows like Russia to, buy stuff and turn it into weapons. There's lots of like companies that are using China as like some kind of intermediary. Like there's lots of shell companies in Russia that are trying to avoid sanctions. They're buying up stuff and moving it through third-party countries. But I haven't seen any evidence of like official Chinese state help with Russia in terms of like selling them weapons directly or anything like that. That's much more like North Korea's game right now. North Korea very much has high-level state, agreements with Russia. That's like Russia will help us with technology to improve our weapons, and in exchange, we'll deliver weapons to Russia. And then they send shipping containers full of weapons and shells. So that's definitely happening with North Korea. We're not seeing anything like that happening with China and Russia, as far as I know. Stanimir, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
No, I don't have anything. It's just that even on the industrial side, Chinese companies are very wary in terms of selling something directly to Russians. So they look for intermediaries, or you have to pay through a regional Chinese bank, so it doesn't get noticed by the country level Chinese financial institutions. So you get out of sanctions easier. So all of these things are ongoing.
Yeah, so I think we can read from that the Chinese companies are very concerned about secondary sanctions as a result of dealing with Russian entities. So they don't want to mess with that. So that's probably why we're not seeing a lot of this high level stuff, is that the Chinese seem generally afraid of a Western response in terms of sanctions. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very afraid of those.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Maurice?
Not that I see.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for all your questions. We appreciate them. It's always good to get feedback from chat about what you guys are interested in, and we'll do our best to, follow up on stuff like that. I'll try to get some kind of Sapson stuff for you guys in a little more detail, because I know one of our colleagues did work on digging up all the information he could like a couple of years ago about it. Thanks to our panel this week. Mr. Germany to Ukraine forces me to thank myself, so I'll do that.
Yes.
And then, of course, thank you to Stanimir for all of his great insights on the Russian economy. Thank you to Germany to Ukraine for all of his great insights about Germany to Ukraine and the defense of a not popular person to defend. And thanks, of course, to our audience for tuning in live. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and talking to us in chat. Thanks, of course, though, if you don't have time for tuning in for the video on demand. We appreciate you guys, too. We know a lot of you guys watch after the fact, and if you guys have any questions, you can always put them in the comments. We'll do our best maybe next week or whenever. We take your feedback into account, so feel free to leave a comment. As always, you can visit our website, Tochnyi.info. That's a place where you can find real research, real heavily sourced, granular information about things like certain Russian factories and refurbishments they've undergone, maps about drone strikes, all kinds of very specific research that's been done by various members of our team. You can always follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky, just Tochnyi. And of course, if you could, it really helps us out if you like and subscribe to the channel, like the stream and subscribe to the channel. We don't get a lot of boosts from YouTube because we show you guys real spicy stuff. So most of the help we get from YouTube is just from you guys directly engaging with us and spreading our stuff around. So thanks so much for all of your support week to week. We really do appreciate it. And we will see everyone next week at our regular time, 2100 Kyiv time. And we'll see everyone next Sunday. Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava.
On behalf of the brave.